Hello and welcome. My name is Ellen with Ellen Estelle, and today I'm going to show you how to sew Mccalls M7894. This is one of my favorite dress patterns. It has varying lengths, but what I really like about it is that the skirt has multiple curved seam lines. It calls for crepe, georgette, crepe de chine, or chiffon, and also a lining fabric. As you can see, it has a wrap top, which is very flattering for women with a larger chest. It has a little bit of gathering under the bust as well. And then along each of the curves on the skirt, you can choose to do the ruffle or not. I did the ruffle, so I actually did view D in this situation. This includes the ruffle along each of the seam lines and then a ruffle along the bottom of the skirt as well. The sleeves are super full, they're gathered at the top, and they have an elastic along the bottom. There is no center back seam line. It has the continuing ruffles along the skirt here. And then it has an invisible zipper along the side seam. This dress is super flattering. I ended up doing this in a cotton lawn fabric that I purchased from Liberty of London in London. If you haven't already watched my video, please go back and watch that, and I'll give you a tour of what it's like to shop in Liberty. But I was able to purchase this fabric on my first visit, make the dress, and then go back on a second visit and visit Liberty in my dress. Keep watching to learn more.
First, I start by cutting out my pattern pieces. Be sure to double check how many pieces you need for each pattern. A lot of the pattern pieces only need to be cut one time. Be sure to also double check which pieces need to be cut with interfacing and which ones need to be cut out of lining. There is no skirt lining piece, so I went ahead and drafted my own rough cut of a skirt lining. In order to start creating the skirt, you're going to take piece 6 and piece 10. Along the bottom edge of piece number 10, you're going to fold under the fabric 2 times, as small as possible, and sew in order to finish the hem. Then along the top, you're going to sew with the longest stitch length possible in order to pull the bottom thread and create gathers. You're going to pull piece number 10 just enough to gather it so that it fits nicely along piece number 6, like so. Pin piece number 10 to piece number 6, wrong side to right side, just like this, and sew the pieces together at 5/8 of an inch along the ruffled edge. Now we're going to take piece number 4 and piece number 6 and repeat that same process. So you're going to hem the bottom edge of piece number 6, and then you're going to baste along the top edge so that you can gather piece number 6 and attach it to piece number 4. With wrong side to right side, you're going to sew piece number 6 to piece number 4 at 5/8 of an inch along the ruffled edge. Be sure to space out your gathering as evenly as possible. Next, you're going to take piece number 3 and sew it to the top of the skirt with right sides together like so. Be sure to finish the raw edge. Now we're going to repeat this step for the right side by taking piece number 5 and placing it onto this side, right sides together, and stitching at 5/8 of an inch. Once your seam allowances are pressed and finished, take both skirt pieces and match them up with right sides together. We're going to be pinning along both of the side seams. And on the longer side seam, you're going to want to pin up until the large dot, only so from the dot to the bottom edge of the side seam. This side will have your invisible zipper. Stitch both side seams at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edge on the shorter side seam. And now you're going to take piece number 8 and piece number 7 and sew them along the side seam with right sides together at 5/8 of an inch. Finish the raw edges along the seam allowance. Now, to make the rest of the skirt ruffles, you're going to take both pieces, like I'm demonstrating here with piece number 12, and sew one of the shorter ends together at 5/8 of an inch with right sides together. Finish the raw edges and press. Then, you're going to repeat the steps for the ruffles, which means hemming the bottom edge and gathering the top edge. Since these ruffles are so much longer, I am using a ruffling presser foot attachment for my sewing machine like this. Now, whether you're making view C or D, you're going to take your curved skirt pieces and attach your ruffle along the top edge like this, with wrong side to right side. Here, you especially want to make sure that your ruffles are even. Sew this edge at 5/8 of an inch. If you're making view D with the extra ruffle on the hem of the skirt, you will sew the lower ruffle, pattern piece number 13, along one of the shorter ends with right sides together. Be sure to finish the raw edges and press the seams like this. Then, you'll repeat the process of attaching your ruffled piece to the top edge and sewing together. If you're sewing view D, you will end up with both remaining skirt pieces like this. As you can see, I've gathered the entire bottom piece together after sewing on the ruffle. There is a lot of gathering in this skirt. Pin the two pieces with right sides together like I'm demonstrating here. Sew at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edge. Now, if you're sewing view D, you're taking the final skirt piece and gathering the top edge. Then with right sides together, you're going to pin it to the bottom edge of the skirt that you've sewn together. Sew this at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edge. Now we're going to attach the two skirt pieces together. With right sides together, pin together the skirt pieces. Note that the pattern does have a slit along the seam at the front. Be sure to check and adjust how high you would like your slit to be. I made my slit higher so that it was just above my knee. Sew the skirt from the top of your slit all the way around to the back. Finish this raw edge and press the edges of your slit. Finish the raw edges of your slit the same way you did with your ruffles, by pressing the seam allowance under 2 times as small as you can. Then use this method to hem the bottom edge of your skirt. Now it's time for the bodice. There are not nearly as many ruffles, I promise. Start by sewing your back darts and pressing the darts towards the center. Repeat this step for the back lining piece as well. Then, with right sides together, sew your bodice front pieces to your bodice back piece together along the shoulder seams. Finish the raw edges and press. Repeat the same for the lining. Now your bodice should look like this. With right sides together, pin your lining and your fashion fabrics along the neckline. Sew the fabrics together at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edge. Your neckline will then look like this. which looks okay, but could lay flatter. So what we're going to do is something called edge stitching or understitching. After clipping around the curves, folding out the fabric, and pressing the seam allowance under the needle, you're going to stitch along as close to the edge as possible on the lining, just like I'm demonstrating here. By stitching the seam allowance, you're pulling the fabric under and creating a nice, crisp neckline. Next, you will sew the right side seam of your bodice with right sides together. Be sure to match the right sides together for your outside fabric and your lining fabric separately, like I'm showing here. That way, your seam allowances will be sandwiched together and will not be visible from the outside or inside of the garment. Finish the raw edges. Repeat the same process for the left side, making sure to only sew from the armhole to the large dot. You will be sewing in your invisible zipper on this side. Your seam allowances will be sandwiched together like this. Next, you're going to take one sleeve and fold it in half with right sides together. Sew along the side seam at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. Then, sew a basting stitch or the longest stitch length possible along the top edge of the sleeve. Repeat this process for the second sleeve. Now pull on your basting thread and gather the top edge of your sleeve. Matching up your notches, sew your sleeve into the armhole and evenly space out your gathering along the top edge, making sure to only sew your fashion fabrics together. Your sleeve should then look like this. In order to enclose your lining and have no seam allowances showing on the inside of your garment, you will open up your bodice to the inside and work to pin your lining fabric and fashion fabrics together along the armhole like this. The right side of your lining fabric will be against the wrong side of your sleeve fabric. Sew this seam allowance at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. Now that I've sewn my armholes, I'm going to open up the bodice from the inside again and clip small notches all the way around my seam allowance so that the armhole curve can open up and lay as flat as possible. Now it's time to sew in the elastic to the bottom edge of your sleeves. Using 1/4 inch elastic, I have cut the length I desired by wrapping the elastic around my biceps and adding about 1 inch in length. Then, I folded under the hem of my sleeves 2 times like this, at about 1/2 inch each time. Now I'm going to sew the hem down at about 1/2 inch or as close to the folded edge as possible. Make sure to stop about 1 inch before reaching the beginning of your stitching line. Now I like to use a tiny safety pin to help me thread my elastic through. Going in through the 1 inch opening you left in your hem, thread the elastic through until you come out the other side. Be sure not to let the other end of the elastic slip in. Then, you'll end up with both ends of the elastic sticking out like this. Match up the ends of your elastic and use your zigzag stitch to sew the ends of the elastic together, overlapping by about 1/2 inch. Now you'll be able to easily slip the enclosed elastic into the hem. Just sew the remaining 1-inch gap in your hem to seal the elastic in your sleeve for good. Now your bodice will look like this. Overlap your right over your left side of your bodice at the center front, matching up the markings. Baste the overlap portion of your bodice together and slip the bodice on to double check that the neckline is as high or as low as you would like it. You will be sewing your fashion fabric and linings together as one at this point on. Then, you will baste in between the 2 notches along your bust on both sides. Pull the basting threads and gather your bust. Now it's time to grab your skirt and skirt lining if you have it. With right sides together, pin your bodice to your skirt along the waist seam and sew them together at 5/8 of an inch. Finish your raw edges. And the final step is to sew in your invisible zipper to the left side seam of your dress. I really hope you've enjoyed my tutorial. This dress is so flattering and easily one of my favorite dresses to date. Till next time, please like and subscribe.